Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Richardson and this is the news. The head of the Polish Teachers' Union, Sławomir Broniarz, has announced that nearly 80% of the schools in the country have voted in a referendum to take part in the planned teachers' strike. In response, the Deputy Prime Minister, Beata Szydło, said that the government will be presenting a Plan B that will allow the school examinations planned for April to take place despite the teachers' strike. On Monday, 1st of April, last-chance talks between the government and the Polish Teachers' Union and other teachers' trade unions will be held.
Według danych Związku Nauczycielstwa Polskiego,
The Polish Teachers' Union says that 79% of the schools and preschools will take part in the strike. The Ministry of Education is skeptical about that number because they claim that more than half of the educational institutions simply did not take part in the referendum about the strike. The Plan B, to ensure that the exams will take place no matter what, is in preparation and will be announced by the Deputy Prime Minister Beata Szydło next week. According to the data we received up to this morning, about 79% of schools declared they would take part in the strike. In one of the districts, the Kujawian-Pomeranian, we even had a rate of approval over 90%. The actions of the principals of some schools and some district directors of school districts to call on teachers not to strike did not influence the outcome that much.
Zdajemy sobie wszyscy sprawę z tego, że musi w każdym państwie.
We all realize that in every country we must have a certain order. If we gave such high pay rises to only one group of professionals, it can be expected that the other professions would follow suit. I do not think that the professors at universities are willing to accept the situation that a certified teacher makes more than them.
Do gry włączyła się także Platforma Obywatelska.
The Civic Platform Party also joined the game. Their leader, Grzegorz Schetyna, announced that if the teachers do not get the pay rise, they will give it to them when they win the election. Whether Schetyna will have a chance to fulfill his promise, we will find out in a few months. Meanwhile, this coming Monday, the official talks with the present government are set to continue. If they fail, the strike is scheduled to start on April 8th.
Sukcesem to strajk nauczycieli rozpocznie się już 8 kwietnia.
An intensive discussion on the LGBT+ declaration was held today during a session of the Warsaw City Council. The declaration, signed by the Warsaw Mayor, Rafał Trzaskowski, in February, includes, among other things, the introduction of a new model for sex education in Polish schools.
Today's session of the Warsaw City Council aroused a lot of controversy. The session touched on the subject of the financial results of the introduction of the LGBT+ card. Law and Justice Party councillors demanded the concrete amount of money needed to implement the declaration. Unfortunately, there was no information. Unfortunately, just as we expected, there is no information about the details of this declaration. But we will demand it because we still don't know how much money is needed for the declaration to be implemented completely. The councillors paid attention to the fact that the Warsaw Mayor Rafał Trzaskowski imposed the introduction of the declaration, but as an inspection authority, the Warsaw City Council should have formally accepted it first. The LGBT+ declaration was defended by the councillors of the Modern Party and the Civic Platform Party.
What should we invest in if not in the human rights? And that's equality and freedom. We invest in freeways, but what about human rights? I think it's the right thing to invest money in.
During the debate, the Law and Justice Party was accused of fascism, which aroused indignation.
Ladies and gentlemen, as a person who had at least 3 relatives murdered in concentration camps, I object to these words and I want this person to leave the room.
In spite of, among other things, a lack of information on the amount of money needed to implement the LGBT+ declaration, it will probably enter into force in the capital soon.
The Warsaw Regional Prosecutor's Office has refused to investigate the refusal by the Central Anti-Corruption Bureau to carry out a detailed audit of Law and Justice Party leaders Jarosław Kaczyński's tax invoices. Civic Platform members of Parliament, who had filed the complaint, described the prosecutor's decision as a scandal. A spokesperson for the ruling party, Beata Mazurek, said that this was yet another opposition attempt to discredit the party leader.
Zwyczajowo ten proces trwa powyżej pół roku.
Usually, this kind of process lasts half a year. Some were audited for as long as 9 months, some an entire year. The Central Anti-Corruption Bureau under the ruling Law and Justice checked Jarosław Kaczyński's tax invoice within 4 hours. That is the reason for which we filed a complaint to the Warsaw Regional Prosecution Office. Today, they said that, in their view, there was nothing extraordinary about this process. That is a sham, a disgrace of justice.
Jarosław Kaczyński disclosed his income, obligations and positions in all of his tax invoices. Today's conference of civic platform politicians had one purpose and one purpose only: to create a media ruckus to lead Poles to believe that there could be something wrong with Jarosław Kaczyński's tax invoices. They are doing it out of spite. They entered the parliament yesterday. They know very well how the procedures are handled.
A Polish tall ship, which has been promoting the country as it celebrates the centenary of independence, has returned home after a round-the-world cruise. On Thursday, 28th of March, the WWII sailed into the Baltic city of Gdynia, from where it had set out on its independence cruise last May. The WWII visited more than 20 ports worldwide during her 10-month voyage. Last year, Poland marked the centenary of regaining its independence after more than 120 years of foreign rule. The European Union's executive said on Thursday that if the United Kingdom fails to ratify the withdrawal agreement this week, Brexit will be postponed only until 12th of April, by which time the UK must inform the EU of its plans. Commenting on the indicative votes in the UK Parliament, which produced no clear majority on any of the 8 alternatives Brexit options, European Commission spokesman Margaritis Schimas said he counted 8 negative votes, but added that the EU was awaiting a yes on the way forward.
We counted 8 no's last night. Now we need a yes on the way forward. If the withdrawal agreement is not ratified by the end of this week, Article 50 will be extended to 12th of April and is now for the UK government to inform us about how it sees the next steps. President Juncker had repeatedly the occasion to state publicly his support and respect to the Prime Minister.
That's the news. Thank you for watching. Stay with us for the weather, business and more besides. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.
Welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's see the forecast for tomorrow. We will see plenty of sunshine all over Poland. The most amount of sun will appear around Kraków, Katowice and Wrocław. Temperatures will range from 12 to 14 degrees. Let's take a look at the forecast for our continent. In the Balkans, temperature will range from 14 to 16 degrees in Sofia. In British Islands, more sun is expected. There, the temperature will range from 15 to 17 degrees in London. Temperatures will increase in Scandinavia to 13 in Oslo and 15 in Stockholm. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Poland Daily Business Edition. Tonight, Julia Krzysztofiak-Szopa of Startup Poland Foundation is our guest. Ma'am, welcome to this.
Good evening.
Well, we talk about startups, and to have a good startup, you need to have great idea. You have a passion, devotion, consequence, and other part of the equation. You have to have capital.
Yeah, money. Money is very important.
And in Poland, we are not short of good ideas.
No, we are not. I would say there's a lot of good ideas on the market and many bright and very inspired, motivated entrepreneurs. When it comes to capital and cash, we also do have cash. Of course, you know, when you compare, for instance, a typical seed round, so the very first investment round in a startup here in Poland, with, say, Western Europe or America, is a different order of... So, for instance, here, you know, over a third of first investment rounds have not exceeded 125,000 euro. In Germany, it's 700,000 euro. And in the US, it's $1.5 million when it comes to the seed round. So, of course,
so our startuppers, why don't they move to California to
Some do. So 25% of startups in Poland have had registered a company, like a sister company or a subsidiary in the US, in the UK, Estonia or other jurisdictions.
Okay, just to make possible this funding from other sources. Let's say how easy or how difficult it is to start a small startup company here in Poland?
I think it's not super easy and it's not super difficult. And you can do this, as many startup examples have shown. What is different is, of course, that the amount of capital that you can raise from the Polish venture capital funds and Polish business angels is smaller than the amount of capital that you can raise in Western Europe or in the US.
So what people do in this case?
Some of them register a company and move, especially their business part, to Silicon Valley, for instance. And there is Estimo, Spain, who had this double entity here in Poland and there in Mountain View or San Francisco and many others. Some of them try to raise money here in Poland. And, with the new financial instruments available from Polish Development Fund, for instance, or the National Center for Research and Development, we see that there is more and more capital available for innovative companies here in the country.
Because this is a mantra: be innovative, create new companies, do risky stuff, and then if you fail, if you bankrupt, well, sorry, that's the consequence. But let's say what the state could do to make easier for those guys who are starting their startups to start and then the success.
I think that the most important role of the state today is to motivate people, private individuals who have money, to be more eager to invest in risky, ventures. And the thing that has been done abroad so far is tax incentives. So, for instance, the United Kingdom has this very good enterprise investment scheme, which is a system of tax incentives for business angels and people who invest in startups. In Poland, we don't have it. We have even double taxation on venture capital funds. So, the state should not only focus on opening a tap with money flowing, with the state money flowing, because this is not sustainable. And, the Prime Minister is talking about sustainable strategy of development for the economy in Poland. But sustainability is creating the mechanisms that will allow this to happen or continue happening, even when the tap is closed.
So, tax incentive for the rich guys, and on the lower level for those who are starting?
We need a better education system. There's everybody says that education is the key to open every to solve every problem. But the truth is that Polish entrepreneurs lack, and they say this very openly, that they lack business and marketing skills. And this is a kind of skill sets that we import from Anglo-Saxon part of the world, from the Great Britain, from the US, and so on. How about we focus in the educational system on developing these skills among our students here in the country?
The skills, the regulations, and opening for new businesses, that's the key for startup success. At least so says Julia Krzysztofiak-Szopa of Startup Poland Foundation. Ma'am, thank you very much for visiting. And that was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business Edition.
Welcome to Poland Daily Weather. In all regions, sky will be cloudy. Rainfall will appear on the east in central and western Poland. Temperature will range from 2 to 7 degrees in Zielona Góra and Szczecin. Pressure will be high. Let's see the forecast for tomorrow. We will see plenty of sunshine all over Poland. The most amount of sun will appear around Kraków, Katowice and Wrocław. Temperatures will range from 12 to 14 degrees. Let's take a look at the forecast for the next days. On Saturday, temperature will rise to 18 degrees on the southwest. Little rainfall is expected along the Baltic coast. On Sunday, temperature will start to drop. We are expecting showers in all country. On Monday, rainfall will leave Poland, but lots of sunshine will appear in most regions. Temperature will fall to 7 degrees. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
The Scouting Association of the Polish Republic was founded on the 12th of February in 1989. At present, the Scouting Association has over 15,000 members. It is an associate member of the Confederation of European Scouts. The Scouting Association is a public benefit organization that was established in 1989. It aims to continue the traditions and educational thought of several generations of Polish Scouts. The roots of the ZHR, or the Scouting Association, date back to 1980, when the Circle of Scouting Instructors was created. Andrzej Małkowski gathered together independent environmental scouts and instructors. The Scouting Association of the Republic is a community of friends, children, youth, and adults who, based on Christian values, through Scout leaders, work on themselves to help others. They seek adventure and pursue other elements of the Scouting life that educate a person to find a life full of happiness, to be responsible for oneself and for one's fellow citizens, and to take on the challenges of the modern world.
And what was the role of Scouts during the Second World War?
To był czas trudnej wojny, ale czas wojny ma też bardzo piękny epizod harcerstwa poza Polską, a mianowicie...
This difficult time of war was also closely linked to events connected with Scouts which happened outside of Poland. It is important to mention Polish Scouts in the East, movement which was created precisely in order to take care of the children rescued from the Soviet hell by General Anders's army. That group counted as big as 20,000, almost half of whom were orphans. Those children were brought up in the Scout culture. They received education and had their free time taken care of. Some of the older boys joined the Junacy, a paramilitary organization, or joined the Polish Second Corps. However, the younger kids, at least those who were preserved, were first transported to Persia, today's Iran, and later spread across the continent to India, Australia, New Zealand, Northern Africa, and South Africa. After the war, they had a slim chance of returning to Poland. That is why they spearheaded the Polish diaspora around the globe, creating a free and sovereign entity of Poles who could not return to their homeland. That was a difficult time of World War II. I think that the element that ties it all together was the second conspiracy. In many places where we are uncovering the battlegrounds, searching for wartime remains and exhuming the bodies, we are discovering Scouts' crosses. Most of them were soldiers of the World War II. For instance, the Baltics unit defeated at Wrocław, one of the Institute for National Remembrance most recent discoveries. Although the cross was not a big item, it does show that this movement of young people going into World War II originated from the Scouts.
Zlikwidowany pod Grodkowem to ostatnie dzieło IPN-u sprzed 2 lat profesora Szwagrzyka, gdzie też przy pierwszym odkrywce znaleziono krzyż harcerski. Jest bardzo symboliczny, jakby pokazujący.
When we are looking at the biographies of famous historical figures, such as Witold Polecki, we can read that they were Scouts right off of their tombstones. They were Scouts first, and then they could be anything that they were in their adult life. Therefore, I think that if we were to sum up what the Scout Association brought to Polish society in the interwar period, was certainly the strong foundation of devotion and servitude to the country. They acted whenever they saw an opportunity to wisely serve Poland when the situation demanded their input. That was also the case with the second conspiracy. In the late 1940s and 1950s, over a dozen of organizations tried to raise the new generation using the Scouts' values, which were banned at the time. Oftentimes, these organizations were being broken down by the communist authorities, which resulted in prison sentences and career-ending limitations. These young people could not graduate high school and therefore could not attend universities. In general, they were punished for their courage in creating scouting structures. This would hamper their entire futures.
Więc generalnie za tę odwagę stworzenia młodzieżowej struktury harcerskiej również ciążyło na ich całym późniejszym losie w PRL-u w czasach komunistycznych.
During Holy Mass on World Youth Day in Krakow, Pope Francis announced that Panama would be the next host for a world meeting of Scouts. A meeting in the Southern Hemisphere was a distant target for the ZHR Scouts from Poland. The president of Panama, appreciating the involvement of ZHR in medical security, invited their representatives to meet. Participation in World Youth Day on the border between the Americas, that is Panama, between North and South America, and being in Central America is a perfect place for this gathering. The entire Polish scouting organization, in particular the Scout Volunteer Ambulance Service, are preparing themselves for this event.
And you have mentioned Witold Pilecki and Jan Nowak-Jeziorański. Who else could you say was an icon of the most important maybe person relating to scouting?
Ja myślę, że dla młodzi ludzie wychowani w harcerstwie, tak jak już wspomniałem, potrzebują ten element wzoru osobistego. Bo to jest
Young people who spend their entire life immersed in scouting, as I mentioned before, need this element of a role model. The scouting method consists in raising by the personal experience. I often repeat the fact that the communist authorities did everything they could to destroy the real message that the scouting sends. That's because it was simply dangerous. The year 1940 showed that, as well as events that happened after 1956. Back then, scouting instructors were also trying to recreate the real message of it in Poland.
Zgody na to po prostu nie było i próbowano na różne sposoby temu przeciwdziałać, ponieważ oddziaływania przez osobisty własny przykład.
After 2 years of this experiment, there wasn't a permission to do it. There were many ways to work against it. Every attempt to achieve this goal of showing the real message of scouting by the personal experience, on the other hand, reading out the unambiguous idea of serving God, Poland and the fellow creature seems to be very universal, but it's not that obvious. As we know, the communist authority put a lot of effort to these actions, not to be that obvious, not to be read out. It was obvious that they had to read out another benchmarks. A cavalry officer, Witold Pilecki, not that known for young people. He was a scout, an officer, a commander of the important Reduta, the house of a tourist in Ochota, a district of Warsaw, in the Warsaw Uprising, but also a soldier of the Polish Second Corps. He came back to Poland to bring back the freedom and independence. He is a forgotten heart for young people today, but still a huge impulse. I know a team of Witold Pilecki in Warsaw, and this team is trying to participate in every event that has connection with their hero.
Do dzisiaj próbuje uczestniczyć w wszystkich wydarzeniach związanych z swoim bohaterem, ma swoją aktywność na Żoliborzu, więc w miejscu, w którym Pilecki również mieszkał, uczestniczyli przy odsłonięciu.
Their activity takes place in Żoliborz, so in the place he used to live. They participated in unveiling of Pilecki's monument. They also take part in events commemorating his death in the Mokotów prison every year. For them, it is an example of respect that they are trying to show to their nation. And this is a very good foundation, because I think it is a very deep strength of the scouting. The thing that we consider a foundation in our youth, it fulfills in our adulthood, and we want to believe in it. That is why we thought about establishing another organization, because the communist authorities didn't want to make some changes in the Polish Scouting and Guiding Association at the time of the Polish People's Republic.
Służby Bogu deklarowano bardzo wyraźnie świecki i inne wręcz ateizujący charakter tej organizacji.
Back then, there wasn't a place for God's service. During that time, they wanted this organization to have an atheistic character. These are very sad things that we are trying to forget, but I have a lot of friends who were removed, for instance, for organizing holy masses. Many of our environments created an opposition against the officially binding scouting law and the vow, because we wanted to keep our vows from the pre-war version. The year 1988 or 1989 was the year of choice, because we didn't want to demoralize the young people, but to be a role model for them by telling the truth, without a needless camouflage. That is why the name, the Scouting Association of the Republic, differs from the original name.
Odbiega trochę od nazwy tradycyjnej.
What was the first name?
The first name jest Związek Harcerstwa Polskiego. Poza Polską działa Związek Harcerstwa Polskiego, który
The first name was Polish Scouting and Guiding Association. The association is not only in Poland, but on 4 other continents as well. The head office is located in London.
Znaczenie, bo zupełnie podobnie jak rząd na emigracji, władze harcerskie z okresu międzywojennego, przede wszystkim z przewodniczącym Michałem Grażyńskim, wojewodą śląskim.
It has a symbolic meaning because just like the government in exile, scout authorities from the war period with the leader and provincial governor, Michał Grażyński, initiated this work after the Second World War in 1946. It still works today.
I w Australii. Myślę, że jest to jedyna organizacja, która w takim układzie globalnym.
The organization has 7,000 to 9,000 young people. It works in North and South America, Europe and Australia. I think it is the only organization that tries to raise young Poles in a global character. They try to raise them with their religious and patriotic traditions and values. They teach them how to serve their homeland, fellow creatures and God. This organization continues the work of the Middle War organization, which was called the Polish Scouting and Guiding Association. We wanted to fight for this name in Poland. Unfortunately, our trials, especially in Krakow, failed. Every environment united in 1992. Some people from different scouting organizations joined us in 1995 because we wanted to bring back the pre-war scouting tradition. Maybe we're not only association that tries to raise young people that way, but we try to do it.
Podejrzewam jedyny związek, ale w warunkach polskich tak próbujemy młodych ludzi wychowywać.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we will be talking to our guest, Mr. Krzysztof Jabłonka, a Polish historian, about the role Poland played in the Second World War. The Poles fought with weapon in hand not only in Poland, but on multiple fronts all across Europe. With our guest, we will explore the contributions of Poland in the Second World War. During the Second World War, there is this ambiguous question known as the Polish question. And it was like an argument between the Soviets and the Western Allies about the sovereignty of Poland. I was wondering if you can tell us how that developed and how does it look?
Trzeba powiedzieć, że tak zwana sprawa polska była jedną z najpoważniejszych, jeśli nie najpoważniejszą sprawą II.
We have to say that the so-called Polish matter was one of the most serious, if not the most important issue of the Second World War. Poles were not only the first victims of this war, but also the Poles were among the fiercest and strongest opponents of both totalitarian systems. In a situation where these two totalitarianisms, meaning Nazism and international socialism, started fighting against each other, the international community was faced with a problem. Which system was better and which one was worse? Poles claimed that both are a danger to the world. In 1941, the Atlantic Charter was signed on the British battleship HMS Prince of Wales. The charter creates an alliance and secures the cooperation of all countries fighting the Axis powers. The charter was signed by the Norwegians, Danes, Belgians, Dutch, French and many more. They promised each other that they will help each other to regain their independence together. And then we have the year 1942. Supplies to the Soviet Union are sent from 3 directions. Tanks and planes were delivered in pieces by big military convoys to the Soviet ports in Arkhangelsk and Murmansk. Planes flying from North and South Dakota to Krasnoyarsk arrived with supplies for the Red Army. And finally, Japan doesn't interfere with the convoys from the United States to the Soviet port in Vladivostok to bring food for starving Russians. The Poles didn't deny the positive contribution of the Soviets in the fight against Hitler. However, they didn't want Russia's defense to transform into a conquest of Europe, something which unfortunately soon happened. Already during the Cairo Conference, disagreements within the Allied camp were visible. Soon thereafter, Churchill, Roosevelt and Stalin met for discussions in Tehran. At the very beginning, the disagreement wasn't that big, but it all changed with time. Tehran was located in that part of Iranian territory which was occupied by the Soviet Union. The line passed exactly through the center of Tehran. On one side, the enormous main bazaar of Tehran was guarded by the Soviet soldiers and by British soldiers on the other. Churchill had different plans for the Allied invasion of Europe. He proposed a plan which would have rescued the countries of Central Europe by starting the invasion from Turkey, through Romania, then Hungary to Poland, then cutting off the Red Army from Central Europe. It would allow for the borders of nations there to look like they did before the war. Unfortunately, the plan didn't receive support from Roosevelt. The Americans preferred to land in France and Italy, where, as we know, they eventually got stuck at Monte Cassino. Italy was largely destroyed, which could have been avoided. Finally, the second, most catastrophic conference for Poland happens. In Tehran, the Poles lost their rights to the eastern Polish lands, which the Soviet occupied in 1939. They argued that they had liberated these lands with large Ukrainian and Belarusian minorities from the Poles. During the Yalta Conference in February 1945, taking place in Crimea in the Soviet Union, the fate of Poland was handed over by the Western Allies to the Soviets. It was decided that Poland would be in the Russian sphere of influence, and that meant communism and oppression of Polish patriots. It resulted in the enslavement of our nation. Yalta is the most painful moment for the nations of Central Eastern Europe. The Baltic nations were also given away to Stalin and then terribly repressed, and Ukraine completely destroyed, but we know that already. The Iron Curtain seals off this part of Europe from the rest, from Szczecin in northwestern Poland to Trieste on the border between Italy and Slovenia. The Iron Curtain also cuts off all states of the Balkan Peninsula apart from Greece. Churchill had intervened in their case, making it possible for the Greeks to defeat their communists and created an independent state. Well, then we have the last conference in Potsdam, which finalized everything. This conference was more beneficial for the Poles than the Yalta Conference because Poland was granted some formerly German territories in the west, on the so-called strategic line, which wasn't ethnographic, it was geographically speaking strategic, as it was the shortest line between the Sudet Mountains and the Baltic Sea. It was the line resting on the Oder River and the eastern Neisse River.
Najkrótsza linia między górami Sudetów a Bałtykiem, czyli rzeki Odra i Nysa.
In 1939, when the Soviet attacked Poland, of course, the relationship between the country isn't that well, and it lasted until in 1941, where German attacked the Russians. That's when we see a little bit of better relationship between the Soviet and Polish. And after that, though, it went downhill. I was wondering if you can give us a run-through of how the relationship between Poland and the Soviet interchange.
Trzeba przyznać, że istnieje teoria, bardzo zresztą.
There is this interesting and increasingly popular theory that Stalin chose Hitler to serve as an icebreaker. Both Stalin and Hitler wanted to start a war in order to change the system in Europe. But Stalin, in contrast to Hitler, who wanted to conquer Europe, didn't want to take over. He wanted it to appear as if he were liberating Europe. So Hitler wanted to conquer Europe first, and then Stalin could come and, so to speak, liberate Europe and the working classes and spread communism. That's probably why he suddenly got along very well with Hitler, and it shocked everyone. These were, after all, ideologies which viewed one another as arch enemies and had fought on opposite sides in the Spanish Civil War. Now, the Spanish Civil War was called a war of the intelligence services. Its outbreak surprised all Europeans. The Germans invaded Poland. Stalin had participated in the planning stage as he had agreed to carve up Central and Eastern Europe together with Hitler. That part of the Soviet-German pact was kept a secret, and Stalin, as a perpetrator, remained in the shadows. Germany started preparing an invasion of the Soviet Union, but there are some clues that the Germans realized that Stalin wanted to attack Hitler in July, so Hitler decided to launch his own invasion in June. The Poles played a very difficult role in the war between the Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. The Soviet leadership desired a total destruction of the Polish elite. They wanted Poland not to have an army nor an intelligentsia. They wanted this in order that Poland could never again revive itself. As a result, the Soviets perpetrated the famous, or the infamous, Katyn massacre. There were also 4 conferences between 1939 and 1941, during which the Soviet People's Commissariat for Internal Affairs, known as the NKVD, met the German secret police, the Gestapo, to coordinate their fight against the Polish underground resistance. So they came to an understanding and created the AB, to put it in other words, to exterminate the Polish intelligentsia. The Germans deported Polish professors from the Jagiellonian University in Krakow to the concentration camps, and the Soviets deported professors of the University of Lvov to the gulags in Siberia. About 500,000, more than 500,000 people, in fact, were transported in 4 massive deportations between 1940 and 1941. The last trains were transporting Poles to Kazakhstan 3 days before the German invasion of the Soviet Union. It's hard to tell which slavery was worse, but the worst thing for Poles was the fact that Stalin signed and accepted the decision of the so-called rigorous Presidium on the 5th of March 1940. The verdict was in fact a death sentence for 26,500 Polish officers who were gathered together in 4 POW camps. In April and May, the prisoners were systematically murdered. The fear of the truth of this early crime coming out made the Soviets avoid contact with the Polish government in exile in London. Stalin was lying in every possible way, that the Polish POWs had gotten sick, that they were somewhere in Siberia, then that they had escaped to Manchuria. The Polish government, with the help of their agents, were trying to find out through Japan whether Stalin's claims were true. But the Polish POWs had been, in fact, murdered. In 1943, a group of Poles used as forced laborers by the Germans were collecting scrap metal along a railway route in Russia. A Polish girl who worked in the vicinity of the Katyn forest told them the Poles were buried there in mass graves. A local person showed them the way, and they discovered gigantic. They got scared, covered up what they dug, and returned to the station. But they missed their train, and they had to report to the Germans why they had missed it. And when the Germans found out there were some mass graves, they decided to dig them up. This was a continuing action called 1006 on Himmler's orders, which was meant to hide the traces of German war crimes. The Germans initially thought that the mass graves of Poles were a crime perpetrated by the German Wehrmacht. But it turned out that the graves had nothing to do with the Wehrmacht. The Soviet Union immediately stated that the Germans had killed the POWs and that they had murdered them in the summer of 1943. But when the corpses were dug up, it turned out that the Poles were dressed in thick military coats. The Germans showed these corpses to the American prisoners because they knew, the Americans knew, what it was like to be prisoners. And they saw that the corpses of these Poles did not have worn-out shoes, which of course they would have had after a year of imprisonment or longer. And this proved that the Poles were prisoners for a very short time, meaning that they had to have been killed somewhere in the winter of 1940.
To dowodziło tylko jednego, że krótko byli w niewoli, a zatem musieli zginąć w 1940 roku.
Poland was engaged in battle ever since the outbreak of the Second World War, lasting all the way until the last members of the anti-communist resistance movement was hunted down and executed in the early 60s. However, their contributions to the war effort will leave an everlasting impact on history. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello and welcome to Poland Daily Travel, where we're continuing down the royal route, starting with the famous Nowy Świat, that's New World Street in beautiful downtown Warsaw. apart from lots of elegant shops and restaurants, there's a lot of history on Nowy Świat Street. We'll encounter the spirits of Frédéric Chopin, Joseph Conrad, and none other than General de Gaulle. And we'll also digest the mysteries of the Polish pączki. That's right, the Polish donut. This is Fat Thursday. That's a holiday in Poland, once again. And we'll be seeing how many donuts we can eat on Fat Thursday, as they call it in Poland. That's the last Thursday before Lent. That's the time when we give up various things for a period of 40 days. And one of those things I'm going to give up after this, as you will see, is pączkis. The fun continues as we go in search of the mysterious Polish palm tree. All this and more as we explore beautiful downtown Warsaw, the Royal Route on Nowy Świat Street. You won't want to miss this. Lots of fun in store. Poland Daily Travel. The best travel stuff about Poland you've ever seen. So stay with us. We're glad you're along for the ride.
We're still on the Royal Route, and I'm still with Arthur.
Yes.
How's your stomach?
Very well.
Okay.
I got taller thanks to these donuts.
Yeah, it's incredible. I didn't know that those donuts were grow food.
I didn't know about it either, but that's cool.
I'm still on a sugar high. I feel like, I had.
I'm a bit dizzy. Like we ate only donuts
dizzy,
today.
Yeah. I think I need an immediate dental surgery to save my teeth. But anyway, we're here, and I just want to point out. You can see above. The Houses of Parliament are that away, not so far away, less than a kilometer. Platz Krzyży, which is a famous square of 3 crosses, is this way. Who cares about the other one? Up here, the University of Warsaw, you can see, because we were there before in previous episodes, and that's about a kilometer from here. And the old town is 2 kilometers and a bit, right, from here?
2.5, almost 2 miles from here.
Almost 2 miles, yeah. And then, I don't know these other things, they don't matter. And this way is the center is about almost a kilometer away, a little less.
Everyone knows this place.
Yeah.
Because this is...
why is this important?
So it's Charles de Gaulle traffic circle. And this is where the Royal Route, which goes north-south, crosses Jerusalem Avenue. Once upon a time, there were, as we said before, 26 Juridikas, Jewish cities outside Warsaw. The new Jerusalem Juridika was connected with Warsaw, with Jerusalem Avenue, which till nowadays is Jerusalem Avenue. Never we changed the name of the street. And
are there a lot of other Jerusalem avenues in the world?
I mean,
I've never seen one.
Well, in Warsaw, Poland, that's the famous Jerusalem Avenue right in here.
Maybe
and
there's one in Jerusalem.
It also divides the city into north and south.
Yep.
So it's a very important place anyways. But what's important, now I will be not that tall anymore. So this place right in here has Charles de Gaulle name because Charles de Gaulle is a very important guy for our country, for Poland. He visited Poland in a moment when Germany wanted their land back. That was taken from Germany after the war. So now they say we want land back, and then Charles de Gaulle comes to Poland, he visits Zabrze and says that it's the most Polish cities out of all Polish cities, and this is how he cuts the conversation. So we have in Poland 5 streets of Charles de Gaulle, 2 sculptures, 2 schools, and 1 traffic circle, which is right in here. Charles André Joseph Marie de Gaulle. Big Polish friend, and we have a copy of the sculpture from Paris Champs-Élysées right in here, right next to.
Where?
If you took a look over there, well, I prefer...
Maybe we can go and see it.
Let's go and see it.
We'll go and see it in a little while. But there's a couple of other things, maybe. Why was de Gaulle, you said a little bit about it, but we know Napoleon was a great friend of Poland. The Duchy of Warsaw, under the Russians, he helped Poland to reestablish somewhat itself. If Napoleon had continued, Poland would have been most likely reconstituted in a larger fashion. But what about de Gaulle? Was he inheriting that love from Napoleon, or was it related to the First World War or the Second World War? What was the thing?
Charles de Gaulle just liked Poland, that's first.
He just liked it.
And Charles de Gaulle didn't want to go back to the war times. And at some point, German politics started to reach these very dangerous for Europe problems of borders.
Right.
So when they started the conversation about the borders, then what's more important than Charles de Gaulle's love to Poland was keeping it safe. And that's what he really did. He had on his mind peace. And that's why we appreciate him, because he appreciated us over there. And in these communist days, when no one would give us a hand, then he really did it. This Frenchman who we love is located in a very important place next to the area where our communist government once upon a time was ruling our country. And then...
That's the big building over there.
That's the big white building over there.
Yeah.
And then communism ends, and you know what we put in that building?
Let me guess, a house of ill repute.
No.
No? Are you sure?
A house of what?
Ill repute.
Ill repute? If it's
it means a disreputable house.
Man. So I
it's
said...
the kind of place de Gaulle
no.
would have, it's the kind of place de Gaulle would have known about.
Come on.
No?
Our stock exchange we placed
Yeah,
over
that's
there.
a house of ill repute. Those money changers.
I thought that there is another
You used to
repute.
work on the stock market, didn't you?
Well, I was exactly in financial branch for 7 years, and I was exactly connected with.
Were you working here?
I wasn't working in here. I was working in the field.
Right. Okay.
What else?
I guess that's about it. I mean, I just wanted to make the point. I just wanted to make that joke about the house of ill repute.
I shouldn't start laughing at the moment later, yes?
We'll be right. Hey,
tell me when I should have
just laugh when you're supposed to laugh, and everything's fine.
But I don't know when I'm supposed to laugh.
No, what do you mean to do? Give you a cue card?
Yes, I
just
would.
laugh when it's funny. Laugh when it's funny. Laugh when it's funny.
Okay,
now? No, not now.
Okay.
Okay, Poland Daily Travel. We're going to resolve this argument.